Loads of questions coming through on the email for Phil Smith, our guest on Ask the Handicapper. studio@theraces.com if you've got a question for the Chief of Handicapping, or you can get in touch on Twitter. Make sure you use the hashtag Ask the Handicapper, because when it comes to searching for the questions, which can be all over the place these days, it makes it a lot easier to do so. Let's have a look at a monster.
American Pharoah cruising in second. Then it's Mr. Jordan in the clear third. Upstart traveling nicely in fourth. He's inching up nicely on the inside of Mr. Jordan. He takes the third spot heading to the half-mile pole. It's a big gap. Top Clearance is losing ground steadily. Keen Ice moves up inside of him, and Don't Bet with Bruno. Into the far turn. Competitive Edge has been there every step of the way. American Pharoah is a length behind second. And Upstart, these three are dominating as Keen Ice begins to make his move. American Pharoah comes looking for the lead at the quarter pole, and he quickly puts away Competitive Edge. Upstart on the outside third, then it's Keen Ice and Top Clearance. They're at the top of the stretch, and America's horse has opened up. It's American Pharoah with that majestic stride, pouring it on through the stretch. Keen Ice runs into second. American Pharoah, the party continues as he rolls home in the Haskell.
Wow, wow. Whatever the opposition, I thought Harry Herbert actually summed it up perfectly at Windsor, that he couldn't care a toot what the opposition was. It's just the impression that this horse gives. Phil, you've been to many Breeders' Cups now. You love international racing, as I think everyone does in the modern era. That horse is something else, isn't he?
He's, well, any horse that wins the Triple Crown in America, and it's such a rarity, has got to be a decent animal. And it'll be interesting to see next week, because we publish our Longines current world-leading horses on the second Thursday of every month, what we finally come up with. I was looking on the system earlier, because we have an interactive system where all the handicappers in the world can go on. At the moment, we've got 2 people who've gone 1:30. We've got one, my colleague Dominic Gardner-Hill, it's his race. He's got 131, and somebody's got 132. But interestingly, the Americans aren't on yet. They generally put their results, their decisions on a Thursday. So it'll be fascinating to see what the Americans do. So we've got 2 on 130, 2 higher at the moment. I'll be a bit surprised if he doesn't get higher than 130 next week. And
just remind us, what was Frankel on the basis that he's been the best?
At what point?
At his peak, at his highest ever rating.
OK, well, there's a subtle difference in the sense he got his highest rating as a 4-year-old. And, of course, all these horses, would be great to see them. It's all very well them getting weight for age in these races. But what we prefer as handicappers is seeing them give weight for age, which that's why Frankel is a great. He's 140.
So he's miles better than American Pharoah.
And he's done it giving the weight for age. And I think that's a key difference between both American Pharoah and Golden Horn when you're comparing him with Frankel.
So would you say, if owner breeder Anthony Oppenheimer is watching, as far as Golden Horn is concerned, if he wants Golden Horn to be credited as a great by the handicappers, the horse has to stay in training?
Well, See the Stars would probably be the highest rated horse in recent years. He got to 136 as a 3-year-old, and that's clearly a very high rating, and See the Stars is obviously a very good horse, and his record speaks for itself. But I personally don't put him in the great category because he didn't do it as a 4-year-old.
Fascinating. And Golden Horn compared to American Pharoah, who is the best officially at the moment?
Well, I suspect we've probably got American Pharoah a pound higher than Golden Horn, but it's hugely difficult. And we're only in a sort of an interim stage of the season, and a lot will happen later on in the year. and we're looking at 2 completely different scenarios, aren't we? A 1.25 miles in the Eclipse for Golden Horn on British turf is way different, as you've just seen, from American Dirt over 9 furlongs in the Haskell. And the good thing is that we'd be pretty confident about Golden Horn's figure. The American Pharoah's figure is, to some degree, speculative. We've got the second horse on 115 from the Belmont. He gave him £4, and Dominic has called the winning margin 6 lengths. I think the official was about 2.5, but I don't think anybody would quibble with us saying that we felt that he was value for 6.
I would say 6 was harsh as well. I think it could have been 10 to 15.
You may think it could be further. But of course, the other difference between Golden Horn and American Pharoah is Golden Horn has taken on older horses. American Pharoah, so far, has only run against fellow 3-year-olds, and I actually don't think much of the overall level of the American 3-year-old crop. They've clearly got a great horse at the top, a very good horse at the top, but what the rest of them are, I'm not so sure. So it'll be interesting to see when he goes in Breeders' Cup Classic, which hopefully he will. He'll take on the older horses then, and we'll find out how good he is.
Is the other issue with these top horses from around the world that Golden Horn, in some quarters, has already been slated for not running at Ascot because he couldn't go on the ground, allegedly, or connections didn't want to run him on that ground at this stage of his career, which was probably slightly the same with Frankel. He only really went ridiculous ground later on, didn't he, when it was towards the end of his career. Whereas American Pharoah effectively is very likely, although he has gone, I think, on slot once, but he's very likely to run on fast all his life. And yet he'll never get slated for not having tried turf or not having done this or that.
Well, I first of all don't slate the connections of Golden Horn for missing the race at Ascot. There's plenty of other targets they can run in, and obviously if you're a race goer and you're going on that day, you'd have loved him to have turned up and so on. But if they believe that that's the best way to campaign him, to get through the season, to remain unbeaten and to put up increasingly better performances, I've got no issue with them deciding to duck that ground at this stage. It's not a problem. But obviously the key thing is, if he is only going to stay in training as a 3-year-old, he's running out of opportunities to get that rating above 130. Clearly he's going to go to York next. Great. He may well go for something like the Champion at Ascot at some point in time. But obviously it's one less opportunity for the horse to show that he's better than 130. I honestly believe that he will become better than 130. I think we haven't seen the best of Golden Horn yet. I'm sure he's going to take higher rank than a 130, even though that's a pretty high rating.
Sometimes I am prone to extremes, Phil. After the King George, I did tweet that Postponed and Eagle Top had absolutely no chance whatsoever of winning an Arc de Triomphe. Would I be problematic with that tweet, do you think, judged on what your figures tell you about the King George, or in fact is that one of the shrewdest tweets that has ever been put on Twitter?
I think it's an opinion, and I think you always put interesting opinions out there, Matt. But I think there's Postponed is a horse I really like, and he's going in the right direction. At the end of last year, I remember wanting him on 118, and he was downgraded by the international handicappers to 116, and he's a horse I really like. So it was no surprise to me to see him. Now he's going on a mile and a half to get better and better, and I think there's still improvement to come in Postponed.
You slightly sort of swerved the question.
Well, I haven't finished the answer yet.
OK, go on.
OK. But there are other horses around who are in the mix. I mean, a horse that I like a lot is Sir Jack Hobbs. He's sort of off the radar a little bit at the moment because he's sort of having a midsummer break. But I'm sure he'll run a big race if he goes to the Arc. And at the moment, he's my idea of the most likely winner of the race.
Yeah, great. Jack Hobbs, who of course won the Irish Derby, and he looked to have really improved from. But then again, the Storm the Stars has let the form down, hasn't he?
Well, he ran all right. I think he won by so far.
You wouldn't judge. It's a bit like saying the horses behind American Pharoah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I thought he was really impressive, and he clearly improved a lot from his previous race.
How far would Postponed be, Phil, behind Trev officially at the moment? Obviously, Trev gets the female allowance, but how far? I mean, these figures probably won't feature Postponed yet, but roughly where is Trev Postponed in the mix now with that lot?
Well, Postponed is going to sneak on the bottom there. On 122, just behind that. Although saying that, we're split around the world with him. Some of my international colleagues have only got him on 121.
So Postponed is the equal of Glen Eagles.
I hope he's going to get in on 122. We haven't seen the best of Glen Eagles. He's going to be way higher than that by the end of the year. You can only give them a rating on what they've actually achieved, not on potential. But Jack Hobbs, you can see there, is on 123. Trev, we've got on 124. And remember, she's getting a sex allowance as well. So the more likely winner of all of those is clearly Trev. Although I do think that Jack Hobbs is making good progress.
I mean, this is where, for me, figures are fascinating, Phil, because I reckon if you asked, let's say 1,000, which is a pretty big amount, 1,000 of our viewers in a match, who would they back, Snow Sky or Trev? 1,000 people would say Trev is in a different league to Snow Sky. Look, you got them on the same rating. What's going on there?
I'd be in those 1,000 as well.
I mean, Snow Sky is clearly not.
It'd be 1,001 because Trev would get a fillies allowance. So even if...
But even without the Fillies Alliance, you're not telling me Snow Sky and Trevor the equal.
Well, Snow Sky's got one good performance. And
where he was given a peach of a ride from the front. You see, this is where your figures
he was given a
slightly come down, don't they? Because you have to take things so literally. But there's no one in the world, not even a handicapper, who thinks Trev isn't miles better than Snow Sky.
Well, it's a question of this is what they've done in this year, right? This takes no account of Trev's ARC results over the last 2 years, where she rated higher. That's what she's done so far this year.
Right.
Right. So
what was she rated at the end of last?
She was in the high 120s.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So she is miles better. Good. Thank goodness we've settled that. That would have been desperate to.
But let's go back to Glen Eagles. I know he's going to do better.
Well, he's got to do better, because if he did meet Golden Horn in the Juddmonte International, which is, we don't really know whether that's going to happen, but if he did, technically you think Golden Horn's an £8 better horse at the moment. Technically. I know you're saying that you think Glen Eagles is better than his rating.
Yeah, I mean, Golden Horn would be the more likely winner, because the other thing is nobody knows yet whether Glen Eagles is going to stay 10 furlongs. Yeah. Or 10.5 furlongs it is at York.
All sorts of different tweets and emails coming through. Well, this is one. This is because people think, I think, that they know everything about handicapping, but there are some basics sort of that not everyone knows. It says, does the handicapper take a winning distance strictly on the book, or did they take into account when a jockey severely eases up? We've had this before, isn't it? Isn't it the case, Phil, that if you severely ease up, you risk being hammered more rather than less?
Well, I wouldn't use the word hammered. We've got to put an interpretation on what we think the distance could have been if that jockey had ridden out to the line. Because if you see every day of the week horses winning by a length and a half with the jockey looking over his shoulder. If we interpret that as purely as a length and a half, we'd be complete idiots to do that. So we have to put. I mean, my team have looked at thousands and thousands of races over many, many years. They're very experienced in terms of seeing situations like that on a daily basis. So you have to put your own interpretation on it.
But as a handicapper, like stewards, you probably don't listen to any of the nonsense said on racing channels or anything like that. But if you're sat at home, jockey eases down, there is the cliche phrase, presenter says, well, he's eased right down trying to fool the handicapper that was tough, and it was. Don't you sit there and you think, right, I'm not going to be fooled by you. You've absolutely tried to take the mick out of me, so I'm going to clobber you with an extra £7.
Well, we don't ever do that, because we're not going to clobber people because they have taken the mick. I mean, the jockey's trying to give the horse as easy a race as possible, and why should he not do that? We've got no issue. But they have to accept the fact that we will put our interpretation on it.
Mm. Jay says Trev would lap Snow Sky.
On that one performance, it wouldn't be... And what Trev's done so far this year, it would be interesting to see the two. I think Trev would win. I'm sure Trev would win. But that performance by Snow Sky was really good. And you can't, talk about his next run, because he clearly didn't run his race next time.
You couldn't be sure on your ratings. Chris in Northampton says, hi, Matt. If I were to say that Eagle Top will win the Juddmonte International, what would Phil Smith say?
I'll be very, very surprised if he does. But I think he'll run a good race, and he's a horse that we really like.
Well, you'd have to say, my ratings are up the creek if he does.
No, but horses progress, and he's clearly a horse that's still progressing. So wouldn't be surprising, but, he'd have to... If Golden Horn runs his race, Eagle Top would have to make a significant improvement to win the race.
After the break, we're going to put a question to Phil about a Coral Cup winner. Just exactly how did, what's he called, Au Petit Soin get his mark? We'll be back.